Cesar and Angela. So you guys had number 6. Okay, so what was your population?
We think it's the county, whatever YY County is.
Okay, I mean, that's like, it's people of YY County. Because YY County is basically a modifier specifying where the people are geographically located. But your population is always gonna be your people. Yes. Okay, and what about your outcome?
Well, see, I'm not certain on the outcome. We think maybe it's to achieve a safe and healthy community.
Exactly right.
Oh.
That's your big, takeaway from it, okay? Your relationship.
Relationship is other jurisdictions maybe, but that kind of, I don't know.
So this is an interesting one, because your relationship, and normally, one of the giveaways is whenever you see working with or working collaboration, whatever comes after that is going to be your relationship. So relationship would actually be other agencies, jurisdictions, and the people of YY County. So people of YY County is essentially both your population, and in this case, it's also going to be your relationship. As Noelia kind of touched on, it's really important when you're forming your mission statement and forming your programs to be working in coordination with your client base. Because oftentimes we, as people who are not clients, make presumptions about what our clients need or what they want. And in fact, those things might not be what they need or want. So that mission statement kind of drives that point home. And then what was your service?
Managed social service?
Right, plan and manage social service. Excellent job, guys. Okay, so Nancy, Cecilia, and Kim for number 9.
Our population would be the Community Action Network, isn't it?
So yours, I intentionally gave you guys one of the hardest ones. Because the thing about this particular mission statement is that it lacks all 4 elements. It's not even really a mission statement, it's a snippet. Is essentially what it is. Because it doesn't specify a population. I mean, Community Action Network, we know who you're working in coordination with, but I don't know who you're helping from that. Your outcome, to be the single voice, what does that even mean? To be the single voice, like, that's not offering, any services. Exactly.
And that would be our service too.
Again, what does that mean? If I were to go out to someone, to a funder, for example, or, someone who I'm looking for a donation, and they're like, Marcus, what does Community Action Agency do? I'm like, we're the single voice for something in New Mexico. Really? You know what I mean? We're not getting any money off of that. And then finally, our relationship. We can argue, if we're being super generous, that because you're part of a network, your relationship, but again, that's really vague. This is an example of a really awful mission statement. So I gave that one intentionally to demonstrate how sometimes there are elements missing, and when elements are missing, it makes it really, really ambiguous and really, really difficult to specify what you're talking about. So you guys did an excellent job with a really hard statement.
Because we didn't put anything down for relationship.
Exactly, because there's
no relationship.
there's nothing there, there's no there. Alright, so we're gonna diagram a couple together, just so we all kind of get the hang of it. So this one, let me look on the sheet, is number 3. Creating solutions to poverty, improving lives in our community. So what is our population here? Anyway. Community, right. So we know that there is a community that is basically being helped, that we're improving lives in. But again, what part of our community? And this is something we'll get into later in Module 2. There are many definitions of community. For instance, here in Las Cruces, we have several different communities. And we can use the term community to refer to people in terms of demographic. We can use it to refer to people in terms of income bracket. So again, it's kind of vague. So really, this mission statement doesn't do a great job of specifying population. Okay, how about outcome?
Creating solutions to poverty.
Creating solutions to poverty, right. So we'll go ahead and do that one.
Would be improving lives also?
That would also be an outcome. Okay, so what about relationships here? Exactly. Perfect. There's not really any relationships here. It's not specifying anything. And then finally, services.
Creating solutions. But it doesn't say how.
Right, creating solutions, you know, we could, if we're being generous, we could argue that, but if we're, you know, being nitty gritty, again, if we're going before a funder and saying, hey, what do you guys do? It's really vague, it doesn't specify anything. So this one is kind of a one-trick pony. The outcome looks really good, and it's very much in sync with those 6 national goals. But again, it's not really a substantive mission statement. So, we'll try one that's a little different. If we turn and look on, sorry, this is actually gonna be number 1. To advocate for, support, and train CSPG-funded agencies utilizing our collective strength to eradicate poverty. Okay, so what is our population?
The CSBG funded agencies?
Right, exactly. Because that's who we're serving in terms of our outcome and all that good stuff here. Okay, now how about our outcome?
Eradicate poverty.
Perfect. Okay. And how about our relationships?
It would be all CSBG funded agencies, wouldn't it? Or not in this case?
For this one, I mean, the way that I've always read this one is that collective strength is an allusion essentially to the fact that you do have partnerships and relationships. But of course, who are you partnering with? Who is that collective strength with? CSBG funded agencies, so you're right. But that's kind of like the part that alludes to that relationship that you have with them. So again, this is your population, but this is also a key part of your relationships and your population. Just like how you work with other clients in order to help them achieve self-sufficiency. Again, you're working with agencies here to do training and support. And finally, what is our service?
To advocate
Right.
and train.
Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent. So it seems like we've kind of gotten the gist of this one. Were there any questions regarding that one?
It might be if we have to come up with our own.
No, we're just reviewing these. I know because anyone who was here back in 2013 already went through that, creating our own, so I wanted to spare you guys that one again. Alrighty then. Excellent. So moving right along, just to note that again, mission statements are what is relationships are what the element that is most often missing. Because people forget those. And again, you don't always have to specify in relationship with, you can say in partnership with, you can make an allusion to collaboration, you can do the collective strength thing, which is really nice because strength is a nice, strong word for using in a mission statement. And so we're going to turn to our logic model real quick here. And this is really the beginning of our logic model. We're going to be using this throughout the day. And so our mission statement is going to go right here. Because again, this is our bedrock, this is our foundation, this is the basis upon which we will build and run all of our programs and identify our outcomes and all that good stuff. So if we could turn to page 18. One other factor that Drucker points out is that the mission statement, even though it is foundational and it's super duper important, it also changes, or it can change, in regard to what's going on in the world, in regard to changes in client needs, in regard to adding a service or a program or dropping a service or a program. And so basically Drucker encourages us to review our mission statement every time they add or drop a program or just in relation to what's going on in the world around us. So a perfect example of that, there's two in the book, we're gonna go over them real quick. The March of Dimes. So their original goal, or their original mission statement, was to eradicate polio. And so what happened with that? Exactly, they did it. They eradicated polio, pretty much. And so at that point, they kind of had to change their mission because polio was gone. I guess they could have closed their doors and been like, you know what, we're done. We're mission accomplished, we're good to go. But they didn't, and so they actually changed their mission statement, and again, in regard to the vaccine, in regard to what was going on in the world around them. And so they changed their mission statement to improve pregnancy outcomes and reduction and elimination of birth defects through education and research. So that's their new mission statement. That's what they currently work on. Another example of this is the YWCA, or the Young Women's Christian Association. So their original mission statement was to provide housing, recreation, and a faith-based community system. So what happened there? And again, maybe a little more background on YWCA. So originally, YWCA kind of provided housing, especially for young women who were moving to large cities, because from what I understand, I wasn't there, but it used to be unseemly for a woman to be living alone by herself in a large city. It was a different time. So again, I ask you, what happened?
Times changed.
Exactly, right? We moved from, where people needed to be housed in one place to, where people were going out and getting apartments and doing it for themselves, and people were going to college, so there wasn't necessarily that need. So the YWCA changed their mission statement from, this is the new statement, eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all by providing safe places for women and girls, building strong women leaders, and advocating for women's rights and civil rights in Congress. So that's a pretty big mission shift there. They added a lot of stuff from just providing housing, recreation, etc. But again, they did it in response to changing times. They saw a change in society and the environment they were operating in, and they adjusted, they adapted. And that's one of the really more important things about organizations, particularly nonprofits. We have to adapt to what's going on. So, all of those were examples of mission change, where someone went out and said, hey, the world is changing, our mission needs to change with it. Mission drift, as we'll see on page 19, and actually page 20, if we'll turn there, is a different phenomenon. Mission drift is a phenomenon that occurs when the agency deviates from its original purpose and core values to take on a task that is related to its mission, but not directly in support of its mission. So one of the ways that nonprofits will end up in these, that Drucker kind of alludes to, is by chasing money. Like, let's say there's a grant funding for something that, really doesn't have anything to do with any of our core programs, but it is money, and it's something that's kind of related to people achieving self-sufficiency. And so if we go after that, then you start to see mission drift on occasion. So a perfect example of this is Sears. So Sears, back in the day, again, wasn't there, this is just what I hear. Sears was famous for really two things. They were famous for their quality appliances, Kenmore appliances, and they were famous for Craftsman tools. That was their thing, that was their niche, that's what they did well. And of course, they went on to purchase Kmart and Land's End. So now if you walk into Sears, what do you see? Exactly, everything. It's like Kmart practically. You've got clothing, you've got electronics, I'm not saying any of those things are bad things to have, but there are other stores and other chains doing those same things. And in some cases, in a lot of cases, doing them better than Sears can do them. So that's a really good example of mission drift, where they were chasing that money to kind of get into that market to diversify their offerings, and they just ended up kind of diluting.
They got in trouble.
Right,
Because
exactly.
yeah.
They were diluting and they got out-competed, exactly. So could I have someone read the shaded section on the middle of page 20, it's going to be the fourth paragraph. And actually, Cecilia, could you read that graph?
Sure. Drucker tells us, defining the nonprofit mission is difficult, painful, and risky, but it alone enables you to set goals and objectives and go to work. Unless the mission is explicitly expressed, clearly understood and supported by every member of the agency, the enterprise is at the mercy of events. Decision makers throughout will decide and act on the basis of different, incompatible, and conflicting ideas. They will put in opposing directions without even being aware of their divergence, and your performance is what suffers.
Thank you so much. And really, I guess the main upshot of that is, again, going back to 2013 at the annual staff training, when we all went through our mission statement, you know, everyone in the room went through that mission statement. That was to avoid that divergence, to ensure that everyone was kind of on the same page as to what our mission was. Because again, if you have dissension, if you have confusion about what the mission is, then you run into the serious situation. You get in trouble. Exactly. So that really concludes the first part of Module 2. Let's see, how are we on time and?
We're perfect on time.
Excellent.
Continue.
All right.
Perfect.
So we're going. It's always a
We are
good thing.
perfect, can you believe?
Rarely am I
Good
perfect.
job, Marcus.
Thank you.
Not A+.
All right. So if we can go back to page 13, and then Angela, could I have you read those last 5 bullets on page 13?
Okay,
Because
the learning
mission-
objectives?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Participants are introduced to Peter Druckel's management.
Oh, just the last 5. 'Cause we kind
Oh, you read the first
I did
one.
first.
Okay, so we'll start with participants identify the difference between family agency or community needs statements. Participants understand that the proper identification of the problems that's the solution. Participants recognize that identification of resources is an important part of the assessment process. Participants learn the importance of gathering data from multiple sources to ensure a comprehensive community assessment. And lastly, participants are introduced to data analysis and prioritization processes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Angela.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we gotta go all the way back to page 21. We just had to backtrack there for the purpose of hitting on those bullet points, to kind of give you the overview. All right, then. So, now that we know our mission, we know why we're in business, essentially. We have our mission statement, and we've acknowledged that there's a need, but now we need to address what services to put in place to clarify that need, basically. So that's really what this section of Module 2 is all about. It's all about assessing the needs in your community and proposing services that address said needs. So how do you know what services are appropriate to provide? As an agency, how do you know what your community needs? How do you know what you should be offering? I kind of gave you the answer right there as I ran on.
The need of the community, you have to
Exactly.
evaluate that.
Exactly. You evaluate the needs. That's what determines your services, not the other way around. All right. So, if we will look here, we actually, this is kind of alluded to in our 6 national goals. ROMA separates the needs into 3 different levels. So we have family level needs, which of course are faced by families, or even individual level needs would still be addressed as family level needs. So for instance, if your need was, you know, people in the community don't have jobs, or and we'll get into that specifically in terms of how we identify what level that is, but it's a family level need, the way we phrased it for that point. We also have community level needs, and then finally we have agency level needs. And we'll get into more how to specify those and how to identify those accurately according to this. So I guess my first question would be, when we talk about community, you know, as we just said, community level needs, what is a community?
Well, like you said, there's different definitions based on the perception of what the need is.
Exactly. Perfect. So, for instance, we could have the community of, so let's just think about Las Cruces, just to kind of narrow it down a little bit. Our community could be the community of the city of Las Cruces. Our community, of course, we have communities within communities, so that could be the Latino and Latina community. It could be the African American community. We could be addressing the low-income community, as we do. We could be addressing the youth community, the senior community. So each of those specific communities within our larger community has specific needs. So that's why it's really important when you're talking about the word community in general to really kind of drill down on who specifically you're referring to. Because each of those communities are going to have different needs, and they're probably gonna require different services. So community assessment, we'll see this on page 21, is actually, it's a systematic process for creating a profile of the needs and resources of a given community or target population. Population, there's that word again, one of our key elements of the mission statement. So, what we have here is just a list of service categories that are funded by CSBG. And you'll also see this in your participant manuals. So, you could just, kind of look at these and see just the broad level, just really all the levels of needs and services that we provide through CSBG that we've identified. So for the services for youth, that might be something like the Head Start, the early kindergarten. And again, youth, there's even communities within youth because Head Start addresses a completely different youth population than would maybe something like teen pregnancy prevention. Again, sub-communities, communities within communities. And drilling down and specifying is really important. So, if we turn to page 22, one of the things that I really want to stress here is the importance that it is not sufficient to identify the varying importance of these broad categories. So basically, it's not important to rank which one of these is more important than the others, as this does not provide a clear identification of the perceived need. So basically, hierarchy here isn't really important. It's more about looking at your community and seeing what your community needs. None of these is superior to the others in terms of everything. And so another way that we can look at the needs assessment is it's kind of like the difference between what exists in the community and what should be there in order to help people. So it's almost like you're looking for an absence, you're looking for a gap or a service gap, which is something that we address a lot. So we're going to do a quick exercise here. And this is just using education as an example. So how many of us would say that education is a need in the Las Cruces community? Everyone? Pretty much. Okay. Good. We're all on the same page there. Okay. So, and we do have a high school dropout rate that is rather high, unfortunately. So, as I was kind of alluding to earlier, there are several ways that we can state this need to address those three different levels that we alluded to with the national goals. So individuals do not have high school diplomas. Again, we've got individuals going on right here. So automatically this indicates for us that we're dealing with a family level need because it's individuals who do not have high school diplomas. Now, we can also restate this education need on a community level. And so that would be, our community does not have youth who are prepared to take constructive roles as adults. And here we have our community level needs. Now this might still be true. It still might be individuals do not have high school diplomas. That could still be a thing that's going on. But what this allows us to do is we see youth are not prepared to take constructive roles. So what does that mean? That could mean, one, they don't have high school diplomas. It could mean they don't have GEDs. It could mean that they don't have job skills training. This encompasses a lot of different elements that this doesn't. So we're kind of broadening what services we might be providing. Because this says we need to keep kids in school. So their high school diplomas. This says, hey, we could have a lot of things going on here, and it's up to us to determine where that gap is, where that disconnect is, and cater our services accordingly. We can also address this as an agency level goal. So you'll see down here, our agency has a need for additional resources to establish or expand GED preparation programs for adult customers who have not graduated high school. So again, and this one's kind of a giveaway, our agency. So we're saying our agency doesn't have the resources. This might be funding, this might be personnel, this might be textbooks in order to help out with the GED testing. Whatever it is, we don't have the materials. So again, we're going to address this need a little differently because here we're not necessarily going to provide an additional service, but maybe we're seeking additional funding. Maybe we're adding on additional staff people in order to teach GED classes. But again, by specifying it as an agency level need as opposed to a family or a community level need, we're changing our approach. based on that fact. So basically, education, if you were to say education is the need in our community, again, that's something that could be true, but that's also something that is very, very, very super duper broad, right? Because again, if you tell me education is a need, I don't know what services in order to provide in order to meet that need. So by specifying the level at which you want to address it, it helps you to know, or at least start to formulate which services you should be providing to meet that need. And also, again, and no one said this, all three, saying that something is all three, it's kind of like our case here, that something is a family, a community, and an agency level need. That can be true, but it's not really helpful because, again, you're not specifying. And if you don't specify, you can't begin to develop your services around that need. Okay, so can we turn to page 24? And we're going to have another activity. And then could I have
What did the brain say? Yes.
lots of page turning? Cecilia, could you read the instructions in the shaded box for this activity?
Sure. Instructions are to identify 3 issues, concerns, barriers, challenges, or other situations facing the clients in your community, and to write these below using a couple words or a sentence for each. Be sure you can identify if it is family, agency, or community need. Next, go back and number the statements 1, 2, and 3 so that they indicate your priority order. When you present to the group, state your number 1 priority, even if somebody else has already chosen it.
Perfect, thank you so much. So basically for this activity, you guys as individuals just write what you think are the 3 most pressing needs in the community, right? Just the 3. You'll have about 2 minutes, but there's 2 rules to this activity basically, which are you can't just give a 1-word answer. So you can't just say education, because that's too broad. And then again, you can't say it's all 3 when you try to identify the level of the need. So just take a couple minutes, see if you can think of those 3 needs and what level they would be on.
On our community here?
Our community here, if we're thinking Las Cruces.